Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Session 5.3, Session 5.3, 20th December 2022. Quran explained in brief. We are on Idin Sirat al-Mustaqim, Ghair al-Maghzub alayhim Falazwalin. Ameen. Show us the right path, the path of those whom, O Allah, none else but us. Give us the right path, the path of those whom you have rewarded, not the ones who earned your annoyance, the Jews, that is, nor those who went astray, the Christians. Amen. May it be like that. So, the elaboration of verses 6 and 7 of Al Fatiha. We continue and Bismillah. Inna shaytana lakum aduwwun mubin fattakhidhu aduwwa innama yad'u hizbahu liyakunu min ashabis sa'ir. This is Al-Fatir 35, Surah 35, verse 6. Al-Fatir, Surah 35, verse 6. Translation: Definitely, the Satan is your enemy. So you also take him as your enemy who cannot like anything good for you. He calls, misguides, misleads his community, devilish people, motivated with Satanism, devilish people motivated with Satanism, that he takes them along to be among the dwellers of hell, that he takes them along to be among the dwellers of hell. Unless one is determined to be misled, misguided, very simple arguments and elementary observations, demonstrations suffice to convince a reasonable man. Unless one is determined to be misled, misguided, very simple arguments and elementary observations, demonstrations suffice to convince a reasonable man, a reasonable person. Every family has a head, every school a principal, every city a town mayor, every province, state has a governor, and every nation has a head of state, and every nation has a head of state. Moreover, every beautiful art is the creation of some great artist. Moreover, every beautiful art is the creation of some great artist. So Allah is the head of the world, and so also of all the universes. So Allah is the head of the world, and so also of all the universes. The marvelous world could not create itself. The marvelous world could not create itself or come into existence by accident. The continuous changes in the world prove that it has been made. The continuous changes in the world prove that it has been made. The maker and sustainer of the world, the creator and the provider for man, the active force and effective power in nature are all one and the same, and that is known to be Allah, and that is known to be Allah. Surah 35 Al-Fatir, verse 11. وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ ثُمَّ مِّن نُّطْفَةٍ ثُمَّ جَعَلَ لَكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَمَا تَحْمِلُ مِنْ أُنثَىٰ وَلَا تَضَعُ إِلَّا بِعِلْمِهِ وَمَا يَعْمُرُ من مُّعَمَّرٍ وَلَا يَنقُصُ مِنْ عُمُرٍ إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ إِنَّ ذَٰلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ يَسِيرٌ. 35 Al-Fatir, verse 11. And the voluptuaries voluptuaries addicted to luxury, sensual pleasures, who have made themselves undeclared gods by declaring, pontificating the right and the wrong against the values ordered by Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They mustn't forget Allah created you, O man, initially from cheap clay, Adam. Thereafter, every individual from a dirty drop of semen. Then he made you couples, spouses, man and woman. That procreation continues till the doomsday, and he knows well in advance what's to happen. And then Allah knows well in advance what's to happen. So no female conceives nor gives birth without his knowledge and preference. And he controls life and death. No person advances in age or has his life cut off, but people haggle about the cause and effect. Whether change is taken as a direct action in recreating the atoms in different states of instantaneous being, or every change as a succession of events with no secondary casualty. Allah is the prime and only cause of all that takes place. All is saved in a book metaphysically, metaphorically, and it is all extremely easy for Allah, and it is all extremely easy for Allah. Allah has raised the mankind and structured the human society on couples, spouses, man and woman, bounded as husband and wife. Idea fixe of the 20th century regarding liberty, freedom, the rights of the individuals, the right to do whatever one likes with one's own body, the right to do whatever one likes with one's own body, secular values and lifestyles, where the next word and Allah are not taken into account, are not believed in secularism. Secular values and lifestyles, totally secular, that is worldly orientation of living, resulted in millions of men and women clamber out of the strewn wreckage of their marriages, divorce, separation, single parent houses, and other forms of familiar disaster overtook millions in a process of a few decades. Totally secular, that is worldly orientation of living, resulted in millions of men and women clamber out of the strewn wreckage of their marriages, divorce, separation, single parent houses, and other forms of familiar disaster overtook millions in a process of a few decades. About in AD 203, it was informed that about 80% children were living in single parent houses. 80% children living in single parent houses, either with the mother or with the father. The modern society thus reeks with the adverse effects of these malapropos combinations like lesbians, gays, open marriages, single parent houses, where the husbands keep changing rounds, precisely like animals, dogs, tomcats, and pigs. The husbands keep changing rounds, precisely like animals, dogs, tomcats, and pigs, without looking into the actual causes, that is, the lack of spiritual recourse. The lack of spiritual recourse and godlessness, malcontent, dejected, frustrated, and lonely, and rebellious people in millions initiated the traumatic process of changing the social sphere and dashed to find shelter, solace, peace in all sorts of experiments in life, nefarious, malodorous combinations, equations of living other than as devoted, committed, and responsible husbands and wives. Apart from lesbians, gays, apart from lesbians, gays, these include unmarried couples and the more detached mother, father-in-law, mother, aunt households, mother, father-in-law, mother, aunt household. The absolute ruination, paralysis, ineffable failure of the modern social sphere is demonstrated, can be seen in the incredible proportion of single parent families. On the average, as of 2002 AD, as I have stated earlier, on the average as of 2002 AD, more than 80% children in USA, UK, Europe are living in single parent families. On the average of 2200 AD, more than 80% children in USA, UK, Europe are living in single parent families. The Western society is reeking with the adverse, ghastly psychosocial effects of these pathetic combinations. Psychosocial effects of these pathetic combinations. Social phobia is the outcome of breaking up the nuclear family, that is, husband, wife, and two children. Not only have the human beings been created as couples, they are the opposites in every creation of Allah. There are women who don't conceive, and those who conceive, those who deliver, and those who cannot, the living, the long living, and the short living man, the long living and the short living man, and other animate objects, the sweet water and the brackish, things which sink and things which float, the night and the day, and so is the good and the evil, and so is the good and the evil. Piety that leads to the pleasure of Allah, piety that leads to the pleasure of Allah and to heaven, and disobedience, transgression that earns his wrath and leads to hell, and disobedience, transgression that earns his wrath and leads to hell. Allah alone has created you, and it is Him alone who is worthy of worship, obedience. Allah alone has created you, and it is Him alone who is worthy of worship, obedience. The others, whom the disbelievers Mushrikeen, pantheists, polytheists invoke for help haven't created anything at all, not even a membrane of a dead stone. Not even a membrane of a dead stone. They can't hear you. They can't hear your prayers. And if they do, they can't be of any assistance at all. All your demigods and demigods will disavow your shirk, pantheism, your polytheism on the doomsday, and none would elaborate things to forewarn you as Allah has, and none would elaborate things to forewarn you as Allah has. The Quran is 30 parts, 30 voluminous parts. The bloody minded people and the bloody minded people must understand, accept the reality, the truth that they are totally dependent on Allah, and Allah is absolutely free of all needs, doesn't require anything from them. And don't consider yourself to be powerful or indispensable. And don't consider yourself to be powerful or indispensable. Allah can lift off the entire mankind and replace it with a new creation which will be obedient as the angels, which will be obedient as the angels. But He permits the good and the evil and the mankind capable of both, and the mankind capable of both the good and the evil to exist, that people obey Him voluntarily, that people obey Him voluntarily, and to reward or punish them as per their deeds, and to reward or punish them as per their deeds. That the disbelievers, questioning sinful, flee the word of Allah and disobey Him blatantly all their lives, and yet appear to flourish and thrive, doesn't bother the knowledgeable at all. That the disbelievers, questioning, sinful, flee the word of Allah and disobey Him blatantly all their lives, and yet appear to flourish, to thrive, doesn't bother the knowledgeable at all. Al-Fatir, Surah 35, verse 1, 6, 16. Insha yuzhibkum wa yati bi khalqin jadid, verse 16. And let not the disbelievers live with false and distorted perceptions that the world is a hugger-mugger, a bedlam, and let not the disbelievers live with false and distorted perceptions that the world is a hugger-mugger, a bedlam, and there is none to grip them, and there is none to grip them, and they can live an unmolested, visceral life, because if Allah prefers, He can remove you off from the face of the earth. Because if Allah prefers, He can remove you off from the face of the earth, eliminate the mankind, or put it at a backstage and establish another Genesis establish another Genesis, stalking, excellent, and perfect in obedience as the angels. Every individual is a life renter of the worldly things, whereas the deeds shall stick to man till eternity. Every individual is a life renter of the worldly things, whereas the deeds shall stick to man till eternity. Opportunities to perform the evil are actually a trap laid for those inclined to devilish deeds. Opportunities to perform the evil are actually a trap laid for those inclined to devilish deeds. These powers, opportunities, and freedom are not a golden spoon in the mouth, but a knife in the back. These powers, opportunities, and freedom are not a golden spoon in the mouth, but a knife in the back, of which you are forewarned well in advance. Of which you are forewarned well in advance. Remain in your shoes, in your limits, for when Allah grips, punishes, none can come to rescue. Man has established a right for visceral pleasures, a diabolical lifestyle in the name of freedom, liberty, and rights of the individual. Man has established a right for visceral pleasures, diabolical lifestyle in the name of freedom, liberty, and rights of the individual. Communities had adopted such subcultures and cultures earlier too. Communities had adopted such subcultures and cultures earlier too, which Allah devastated as a lesson for the mankind. Some numbskulls understand the purpose of things that man has made, manufactured, and use all the facilities in the world provided by Allah to their own visceral purposes, but don't really recognize the purpose of their own creation, that is, to be voluntarily subservient to Allah, but don't really recognize the purpose of their own creation, that is, to be voluntarily subservient to Allah. There is no duplication, superfluousness, wastage in Allah's creation. He hasn't created the man and woman to replicate each other. He hasn't created the man and woman to replicate each other. Fin Diesel, end of the 20th century, women's lib has been stretched to an unnatural replication, duplication of the different roles, not rights, of the different roles, not rights Allah had given the women and men. Equal rights have been inextricably mixed up. Equal rights have been inextricably mixed up, confused with same roles to psychosocial devastating effects and suicide of brilliant communities and suicide of brilliant communities. But Allah has a grand scheme of things of running the universes. Else, bringing mankind or a certain communities to an abrupt or gradual end isn't problematic for Allah to the least. He has well demonstrated his ability to destroy people within seconds. Once he grips disbelievers, sinful, cannot backtrack to reformation, and it's all just easy for him, easy for Allah. And once they are up the spout, in trouble on the doomsday, none will bear anyone's load, burden of sins, Even the dearest would avoid contact. The Prophet ﷺ has been sent to forewarn, to be convincing for those who are not heedless, for those who are not heedless, hedonists, those who fear Allah without having seen Him. But for those who fear Allah without having seen Him and offer prayers, salah, and have it taped, he who reforms does it to his own good, no favor to the Prophet. He who reforms does it to his own good, no favor to the Prophet ﷺ or to Allah. You will see it, the good and the evil you have done, when everything returns to Allah. You will see it, the good and the evil you have done, when everything returns to Allah. Allah unfolded the universes with the first Big Bang. Allah unfolded the universes with the first Big Bang. He folded up all His creation and their deeds with the second Big Bang. He folded up all His creation and their deeds with the second Big Bang. Allah would decide the disputes between people and restore the interpersonal rights of each by making those who committed excesses compensate the wronged, the harmed, the victimized, and the spiritually blind and the spiritually alive shall not be quitted, and the spiritually blind and the spiritually alive shall not be quitted, as the refulgent light and grave darkness aren't the same, nor are the cold and the warm alike in effects, and neither are the spiritually living the same as the spiritually dead, and neither are the spiritually living the same as the spiritually dead. Allah would differentiate between everything, having the most slender differences to an infinite degree of perfection. Allah can convey His message to anyone He considers appropriate. Allah can convey His message to anyone He considers appropriate, even to the dead. But none can convince those who have enclosed themselves in the graves of their ill-fated, cursed, rigid attitude of closed minds and hearts. But none can convince those who have enclosed themselves in the graves of their ill-fated, cursed, rigid attitude of closed minds and hearts. The Prophet ﷺ has been sent to convey the message of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ has been sent to convey the message of Allah, order the good and proscribe, prohibit, condemn the evil, order the good and proscribe, prohibit, condemn the evil, and forewarn the people, and to forewarn the people. He can't proselytize, convert by force. He can't convert by force. That's the end for today. Please pray for me, ex Brigadier Mustansar Billah.